Good. Welcome to the October Tiny Talk. Welcome back. Yeah, we took a couple months off for the summer as we transitioned back in, and I'm really excited about launching these Tiny Talks again for the fall. I'm thinking of it as sort of like our back to school learning again in the fall. I know in the summer I tend to be want to be outside a lot, and fall always feels like a good time to settle down and to kind of start to learn some new skills and put some things into practice at my desk. So thank you all for being here, and we are going to get started with Amanda Bell of Thrive Strategy Lab. Amanda, I'm super excited to have you here. Thanks so much for being here and agreeing to do this tiny talk. I know you have so many exciting talks and workshops and like lots of cool things coming up. So I'm excited to see the tinified version of the new things that are happening in your world coming up. Yeah, so if you haven't been to a tiny talk, which Dolores, I know you haven't been to one yet, I like to pair two different talks together. They're both sides of being a small business person, both sides of sort of being the person driving the boat, is how I think of it, whether that's a business or a nonprofit. There's always kind of the human side, right? The mindset skills, the sort of non-technical or soft skills that are equally as important as the hard skill, the technical things like that. So I always like to kind of pair one with the other. So Amanda, today you're kind of more our holistic skill person, and then I'll be sharing like a specific visual design kind of technical tool in the talk right after this. Yeah, awesome. Well, Amanda, whenever you are ready, I will let you take it away.
Okay, I'm excited about learning more about visual language, actually,
Yeah.
and we'll see if my brain can put enough things together because I think what I'm going to talk about kind of segues into that pretty well. But, TBD whether my ADHD brain is going to remember to plug that at the end. Well, thanks, Lark. I'm always excited, but I'm very excited to be here and talk about probably one of my favorite topics, that you're not doing it wrong, or of course you feel that way. Or as I tell my kid, that makes sense. So a little bit about me. I run Thrive Strategy Labs. So Labs stands for In Life and Business, where the whole point is stop following someone's formula. And at Thrive, I help business owners and really anyone who wants to live more authentically cut through the noise, test what actually works for them, and create momentum that like sticks around. Because when you finally choose yourself, that's when things really start to take off. I have a PhD in education, and mostly because I thought I was missing the point or getting it wrong. So I figured I would just like be like the rest of the people and absorb all of the answers. But what I found out was that there was no there there. But I know a lot of things now. And now my work is about helping people kind of have a similar experience. I live in deep business diagnostics, uncovering what's hidden, often in plain sight, so that we can make the world work for us. And when I'm not doing that, you'll probably find me outside chasing growth and groundedness on a mountain bike, in a tent, on a hiking trail. Finding the kind of peace you only know because there's dirt under your fingernails. That's my favorite, like, oh yeah, I'm doing it right. So, that's a little bit about me. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of a mindset related thing, but we're going to take it to a practical place because I think that oftentimes we talk about reframes and mindsets and things like that. And then we kind of go about our day and don't really think about how that integrates into the work that we do. So, um, let me see if I can get myself set up with this PowerPoint. And we're going to start. And I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. We're going to do this guy and see if I can. There we go. All right. So the whole point here is you're not doing it wrong. Um, so have you ever said any of these things to yourself, um, in a way that feels frustrating and kind of sends you into a loop? I don't know about you, but oftentimes I feel like I'm failing, especially as a small business owner, right? Like there's so many different things I need to be doing, and it feels like everything often feels like it's falling through the cracks. So what do y'all see in terms of the common theme around these statements? Just because typically we center ourselves as the problem, in terms of I need to fix myself so that I can blah, 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 blah. Um, and what we're going to talk about today is how chances are you're probably making something fit that was never designed with you in mind. So like that internal process that we have taken on is actually the most inefficient thing that we have in our business or organization. It's kind of like trying to be like an elephant with zebra stripes who that's sweat on the zebra's face or on the elephant's face because the stripes are meant to like bring their temperature down. So like the elephant is still hot, and worried that they're doing it wrong, right? Like my stripes aren't straight, whatever. Um, here's a round hole with a square peg or square box. Again, you get the analogies. These are the sorts of things that we are doing when we have these sorts of statements. And really, they're just self-judgments dressed up as problem solving. I'm going to say that again. They're self-judgments dressed up as problem solving. And so one of the things I hear a lot about the work that I do is, okay, like that's what I have a therapist for, but like I need to get my work done in my business. And so what we're going to talk about here is a frame that can work for you while you're going through all of this stuff. So here are those statements. Um, and the cool thing here is that these statements aren't failures. They're actually signals, right? So we're able to reframe these statements of shittiness essentially as places where we can be curious and then shift something in the ways that we live or work or show up, right? And what the way to do that is to think about what it is that what is underneath that, what is the system that we are coming up against, and how can we make that more explicit and more clear? So you'll see the statement column and then the reference, right? I should already know this, right? So according to whom? And one of my favorite things to do is ask like, where is it written down? Because two of my favorite things to say are, your brain is an asshole. And I'm forgetting the second one. But it's let me look at we trade in perceptions, right? So a lot of the ways that we interact with each other and the ways that we carry about common like sense and norms is just a perception. And in naming it as a perception, it becomes a lot fuzzier than we think that it is when we say it at the beginning, right? Like it's when I'm onboarding a client and I say, here's the contract. And I give them, even by giving them the contract and they read it. And then they ask a question that was in the contract, right? It's like in my mind, I gave them all of that. They should already know that. But, I made some assumptions there that they were going to read all of the contract and then come to me with questions, or if they did read the contract, that they're going to remember it. And then if I immediately think, okay, well, they should already know this. There's before we were talking about self-judgments, now we're into client judgments. Each one of these is referential in a way. So if we pull out the shame or that sort of like self-deprecation piece of it and look at where we're referencing, then we can kind of start to think about what the signals we're receiving about what's going on either in our life and our business so that we can make a change. And one of the things that I see the most in businesses is that we treat habits as though they are the systems in our business without realizing it when we get to the point where we're like, oh my God, I'm working too much. I've got to change my calendaring software, or I've got to do time blocking, right? But actually, like honestly, on my way to the bathroom before this tiny talk, I was like, I never make time for the things that I need to do because my dishes are dirty. I haven't been able to go to the gym in a while. And I've been in this self-shame place about it and realized it's because I have a habit of just going like a steam train, like I am not. And so that realization, not that I suck and I should be putting these things on my calendar, is that the system that I'm using is not working. And that system is just like me on autopilot. So let's see. So the whole point here is to go from this spiral, right? Signal, shame, I spiral. I go back to the signal, I have shame, I spiral, which is what I have been in with my time probably since Helene, but that's a whole other story. Signal, diagnostic, decision. So that we start to take those messages that we've internalized as, oh, I'm just not blah, blah, blah. And kind of looking at the reverse side of it, right? Like I always say that one of my favorite things that I've been able to say in the last 8 years is when my ex-husband said, I don't always understand where you're coming from. One week you're this way and another week you're not. You're just not consistent. And I said, yeah, that sounds about right. So rather than kind of deflecting and feeling like I'm the one to blame, to kind of take that as reality. Okay, so I'm not consistent. What are ways that I can help you follow along as we co-parent our 10-year-old, for example? So I'm not trying to make myself something that I'm not, right? Like I'm not trying to be that elephant with zebra stripes. Because I find that the most inefficient ways that we navigate the world are ones when we're trying to fit a system or a habit or a behavior or something that wasn't made for us in the first place. So, for those of us who are neurodivergent, we probably innately know some version of this because it's what we've had to do our entire life. For those of us who didn't know that we were neurodivergent until like 8 months ago, that would be me. This is what I have had to do in my life in order to not sit in a corner and rock myself to sleep. And so this diagnostic piece is important, right? Like in terms of reframing. And I want to acknowledge that like those revenue goals don't go anywhere. The pressure to produce and all of that doesn't go anywhere, right? This is not this whole idea that all of a sudden your life is going to feel really streamlined and easeful, but it is an opportunity to disrupt that cycle and create new systems, new processes, new habits in a way that feels empowering rather than disempowering. Because I truly believe that if we are more able to show up as our authentic selves, like as an inconsistent person, owning that and finding ways to send out different messages to the world about how they can keep up or how they can be made aware, right? Keep up is not necessarily the best way to say it. The more we're able to own those things, the better the world will be for everyone. So my question to everyone is, what are things in your life or business that you kind of don't like about yourself and and you've been trying to make better or fix or time block or hack or whatever that you would like to own? And what would that look like? What is that diagnostic for you in terms of how to make the world work better? Because you're not doing it wrong. So I time myself. I'm at 11 and a half minutes. And then
Nailed
hold on. Here's
it.
my email. Oh yeah, here's my email. If anyone wants more information. And we are hosting two workshops, one in October, one in November, on one in October on financial strategy and the one in November about strategic planning, but all from this lens of you're not doing it wrong. Here are some ways to reframe and make it work for you, because both of those fields tend to be a little bit like, here's how you do it. Make sure your P&L is correct, or what are your Q1 goals? So I'll share that link in the chat and we'll stop sharing.
I love that. Thank you so much, Amanda.
My pleasure.
I'll answer your question. So for me, like one that it's this weird thing that always triggers shame, but like I cannot answer emails until like 7 o'clock at night. Like it's like all day. I'm just like, oh, just respond to email. Just respond to email. Just respond to emails. And it's just for whatever reason, and it's like I beat myself up about it all day, and then it's like at 7 o'clock, this thing just like unlocks, and I can just like respond to all the emails that have been in my queue all day long, and it's just this easy, easeful thing that I'm excited to communicate with people. And that's been a big one that I've tried to like figure out like what is going on with that. And try to shift it from that like shame to diagnostic piece. And then like build my day around that rather than try to build my day to like strong arm myself out of that pattern, I guess. So
Well,
I don't
like
really have answers yet, but
my question would be like, what is it about answering emails that feels bad in terms of honoring the way that you work? Like,
Hmm. I think so. There's not anything that feels necessarily bad about answering an email. The thing that I've realized is that I like just coming from a background of having jobs where I work for other people, and the expectation is that everything is wrapped up at 5 p.m. and that the end of the day means 5 p.m. And so something, and I do this with some clients. I do this with like when I build a website, I always make sure to communicate really early that my standard is the end of the day means whatever the end of my day is. The end of the day for you is whatever the end of your day is. So if you are up and working until midnight, that's fine. If I tell you your deadline is end of the day, I just mean that I need to wake up the next day and have it in my inbox. And so I think it's like an expectations thing where I'm like, when I feel like somebody is like waiting for it to receive a response from me by 5 p.m., it's like it just triggers this like, oh, I can't do it like thing. Um,
I mean, it
mhm,
also sounds like maybe email is not the best mode of communication for you. And like a
mhm,
Slack channel actually is
mhm.
a great way because it's less time limited.
Totally. Yeah. 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 That's a good point.
I'll
Hmm.
respond. I'm 63 and I've worked through a lot of what you're talking about. And that's why this, what we talked about before this call, before we
Mhm.
got started in recording is, boundaries, understanding myself, my own practices. I buzz. And so if I can, I'm kind of like you in the bathroom, I'm running and doing things as I go along. But the biggest thing that needed to overcome is with those boundaries, really give the people that place judgment on me. I
Yes.
understand me, but I've lost friends for saying, "Hey, I'm honoring myself. I'll get to back to." And the biggest thing about being an emotional is to say, "I'll sit on that. Let me get back with you," and setting a time. But like Lark, what you're saying is, don't put the guilt. I always say to my clients, within the next 24 hours, I'll get you. If it's sooner, great. If it's not, then I've set a expectation, But mine has been, that's why I loved that human design is it's like, this is who I am. And this is so I'm learning to communicate that is how I work. My biggest judgment is me is like, ever the world thinks I hear it. Consistency, consistency, consistency. I'm doing a 30-day content launch. Well, you needed a post to post on Instagram. I signed up for it. I'm going to be excited. I'm going to do this. That's their way. If I get to it by midnight tonight, I've met my quota. So it's that reframing you mentioned, which I think's, you know, and I have gone through this a lot, and it's like the world's after me. This is my latest thing. And I go, hey, maybe I can see this. I
Looks
have
like
to have a hip, it's a hip. I got a hip replacement in 2022, and I have another one coming up in 2026. So those things, the strategy, and not putting, this is my biggest reality of what you're talking about. That I'm like, okay, thank you, Amanda, is that I set unrealistic timelines for myself. Like I want this done by this time. And I hear the tick, 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 tick. I've got a launch campaign. I also joined on a launch campaign. We're going to launch this product in the next 60 days. And I'm like, okay, I signed up for it as a push. But what you're saying is flow with it. I do it or I don't. The world's not
Mhm.
going to end. That's been mine. And so, yes, what you're teaching, I love because it's very helpful. But I love where I am in life because deflecting. It's like, man, not me. This is my design. I'll get to do it. Does that make sense?
Totally. I mean, I think it
Yeah.
takes living where you are to
Yeah.
kind of stay there.
Yeah.
And I really love how you pointed out that you haven't made everyone happy. And
Mm-mm.
I think it really takes valuing your own ways of working more than needing the validation and acceptance of others. And the cool thing about that is it gives permission to others to do the same.
Yeah.
And what this whole thing does is that it allows us to develop more exposure to different people doing things differently
Yeah.
in such a way that we have more opportunity to experiment and
Yeah.
try things on rather than trying a couple things on. It's like when I was in my 20s and 30s, I didn't want to upset anybody. So like I would wear clothes that people would be like, yeah, that looks nice. And I'd be like, in my head, but I would still
Yeah.
wear them.
Yeah. And you
Um,
felt uncomfortable the whole time.
right.
Yeah.
Because I think it's an opportunity to help folks get to know us. It's like Lark with your email example. There's an expectation that in there, not only about getting back to people within a certain time frame, but also an expectation that that's how you do email. And, one of the things that I think is kind of I'm actually curious, Lark, if you journaled free write, like stream of consciousness around what it feels like to receive and respond to emails, like what that narrative is in such a way that then you could articulate it to your people to kind of be like, look, if you send me three emails, I don't care. Like it's fine because their feelings about emailing you is one thing and that you responding to them is another and to kind of parse out the different pieces in such a way to say like because the context and frame of how we do email is just like a norm that we've inherited, right? Like 20 years ago you sent an email and it was like a letter you might hear back in like 2 weeks. That's not the way
I
it
remember
is.
the day we didn't have email.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's like, oh, it was just enter office. It was like, oh, wow. So yeah. So
Yeah.
you manually handed someone and they got it when you got it. So the world has changed.
It's so much changed.
Yeah.
I also think that this ties to visual language. See, I did remember. In terms of recognizing that there are different, so I love visual language, and I don't think we use it enough in terms of helping people understand concepts, mood, tone, even like complex concepts. Um, And like even how something like a font can convey a brand. And it really ties into this idea of you're not doing it wrong because there are so many different ways to convey information that I think when we get individual language, I find that folks often, as a former art historian, I find that folks are like, well, you just like write the thing and you have a color. And then when you ask them, like, oh, well, how did your clients experience your website? They're like, I don't know. I just put the information out there. Um, and so I think starting to unpack this idea of making things work for us, like visual language is a means by which we can start to think about what that looks like.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. I'm so excited to see
I
your
will do
your
that.
workshops and all the other things that you're going to
Yep.
be offering through Thrive Strategy. Um, I'll be sure to link that website and then anything else in particular that you want to send out in the follow-up email,
Cool.
folks, today. Awesome.
Within the next 24 hours.
Yes. I actually do with Tiny Talks, I actually do like put a if it doesn't happen the next day, it's like it's not going to happen. So uh,
I'm going to do
there
a
are
plug.
certain things that I do time keep on.
Well, there's a platform I'm using, and I don't know what y'all use, but it's called Cohere, and it's got everything. They're kind of building on it, but they can actually, as you're doing Zoom, it actually says, "Do you want to send this?" And you prep it to go out to your email to your clients. I don't know.
That's
I mean, you
nice.
can probably do that without this platform, but there is a way. So as we're recording, that it automatically sets up to send to wherever you want to send it to.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really helpful.
it
Awesome.
saves. It's
Well,
just I like efficiency.
yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, we'll go ahead and hop into talk number two. And yeah, Amanda, you're right. It dovetails really nicely. I was really excited too. I had a feeling that these would go well together, but I kind of never really know until I'm hearing someone else's talk, and it's always a little bit of a gamble of like, did I pick the second topic well, or is this going to be like a total out of left field? And I think these are going to go real well together. All right. So I'm going to share my screen with y'all. And yeah, let's see. Here we go. So my topic today, so the let's see, can you see that visual identity jumpstart? Yep. Okay, great. So my topic today that I is something that I really love. Obviously, I'm a web designer. I do social media marketing. I do content creation for folks. And this is a piece that I really love. I tend to be a really systems oriented person. So, I can spreadsheet and project management software with the best of them, but visual identity is and visual branding is really what like brings me the most amount of joy in my business, and really the thing that just like every time that I get to be like, neck deep in visual design, I just love it. Like I'm so about it. And this is something that for me is really, it's kind of like a different, it's kind of it comes from a little bit of a different place. So I don't have an art background. I literally have not taken an art class since elementary school. That's not something that was ever a part of kind of my scholastic journey. I have a degree in biology. I've worked in tech, and before I transitioned into web design, my background was more in like QA testing and how do we make things work? And so this was a piece that for me, visual identity creation, so branding or art or visuals, anything related to that, always felt a little bit like something that I wasn't really like allowed to claim. It always kind of felt like this thing like, yeah, I mean, there's other people out there that are visual artists. I'm not one of them. Even though I was like constantly painting and crafting and doing all sorts of visual things, for whatever reason, like this always felt like that's for somebody else. This is just something that I do for fun, but I'm not really a visual artist. And then when I made this switch to web design, I was like, I had to have a reckoning. It's like, I am a visual artist. This is a big part of what I do. It's something that I love. It's something that brings me joy. It's something that I have developed skills around. And so my whole kind of approach to this is that number one, you know more about visual language than you think you do. I promise. It's just like regular language, right? It's just like spoken language. You might not be, or written, you might not be able to recite languages of grammar, or excuse me, rules of grammar, but I promise that you know them. And so that's kind of just the number one thing I think that I want you to take away from this today is that you know more about visual language than you think you do. You may not be a brand designer, but it's okay. I promise you still have a lot of the knowledge. The second thing is just that visual language can be broken down and studied in an objective way, even though it's totally subjective. So there's this really funny thing that happens sometimes that people who design in software, so like in Photoshop or Canva or whatever, are familiar with, where sometimes you will find the center, you will find the exact center of a frame, and you will put something there, and your eye says, "That's not the middle. That's not the center." And so, even though it is this objective thing, it is subjective. It is about how you feel about it. It's about perception, which is different, can be different, based on kind of your cultural frame of view. It can be different based on a million different things. And then the last thing is just that there's no right or wrong, right? And this is the piece that I think dovetails really nicely with Amanda's talk is that there isn't one way, right? There isn't one visual language dictionary that we're all operating from as people who work in branding and as people who have Instagram accounts for our businesses or whatever. There's no right or wrong, but having some consistency and then having not a little bit of knowledge of this stuff, it really just allows you to make an intentional use of visual language. And that's really the thing that we're aiming for, right? When I work with my clients in their marketing plans, when I work with my clients in developing their Instagram, I don't want necessarily to see, every post is exactly the same. I just want to know that we are being intentional, right? And we're making choices to intentionally connect them with the people that they want to connect with. Okay, so we're gonna just dive in. That's kind of the most sort of let's talk about it because I really want this to be experiential. So feel free to unmute if you want to unmute. Feel free to drop things in the chat. But what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go over. I think I have 5 examples of some different Instagram accounts. And I just want to hear from you all. Let's just throw some adjectives out to describe. So this is Dr. Sean Arango. And I'm not going to really tell you much about any of these people because I really want it to just be like your visual take on their Instagram feed. And I think it's just like the top 12 posts in each. Okay, so let's just throw out some adjectives to describe this Instagram feed. I'm going to throw out active because I'm seeing like a lot of posts where she's really active. Ooh, confident. I love that. Yeah,
Fun.
active, confident. Yeah, anything else? Confident. Okay, cool. I'm gonna say person-centered because I see a lot of photos of her. I see a lot of photos of this Dr. Sean character. It's so hard not to spoil anything. Okay. All right, let's look at this next one. If you were here for a past Tiny Talk, you might recognize this person. This is Melquia Smith. Got any adjectives to describe this second picture here, this second Instagram page? Playful. I love that. I'm even gonna just throw out illustrations, right? That's a really basic one, but like she primarily uses illustrations, right? There's only, I think two, yeah, or I guess there's one, two, three, four sort of real faces on her feed, but it's pretty much all illustrations.
There's like education/kids.
Ooh, yeah, definitely. Kids, totally. Teamwork. Ooh, I like that. It's fun. Yeah, ooh, yeah, like let's work together. Yes, please. All sorts of things like that. I love that. There's a lot of like plain colors that I see. So like she's not using a ton of texture, right? So versus like when we look at Dr. Sean's, there's so much texture, right? There's clouds and sea and sand and backgrounds and offices. And Rokuya is using a lot of like plain backgrounds, which makes sense with kids. Yeah, primary. Cool. I love that. All right, so now let's move on to one that's kind of similar in that there's a lot of illustrations, right? But what are some of the differences? Bold, yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot of words. Busy, yeah, definitely. And none of these are bad things, right? None of these are subjectively like good or bad. They're just really different. Yeah, bold, busy. I'm seeing like a lot of information. It's very informational. A lot of words on page. Anything else? Encouraging. Yeah, totally. I'm gonna throw out millennial. I think this is a very millennial page. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it exactly why, but there's just something about this that just really reads millennial to me. Yeah, oh yeah, for the color palette. I think bold. I think that's a good, yeah, version. Okay, and then here's another one that is millennial, right? But is very different. What are some words for this one? Classic. Oh yeah, classical. I like that. Okay, classical. You can just say like floral, right? It's very like elegant, I think. Yeah. I don't understand why Siri just heard the word elegant and turned on. It's very unsettling. Okay, so now we're gonna do a total tone shift because I'm not gonna lie to you, I got through four of these and then I realized I didn't have any Instagram accounts for men. That was just a personal bias that happened. And so this is a total tone shift. There's not a secret thing that connects these two, like there has been for the other ones. All right, so how about for this one, right? This is like the opposite end of the spectrum. What do we see here? This is for Attorney Ryan. Talking. Yeah. Yeah, it's like mostly we see that he's talking. I'm going to say personal, right? This is very similar to Dr. Sean in that it's a lot of pictures of just him, right? You can see like you're following this guy. I am going to say it's a lot more masculine. Oh, maybe that's the secret connection between these two is that this one is very feminine and this one is very masculine. Right. And so this is where I kind of also want to point out like it's not just the thing that's the center of your awareness and the center of your focus, right? So in this this is Tia, right? And you can see like it's Tia and it's the flowers, but it's also like she's outside. It's about the backgrounds that she's selecting. It's about those sort of subconscious things that are happening that, you might not think, wow, what a beautiful wall of pastel colors. When you look at this photo, but it helps kind of paint that picture of like soft, floral, classical, elegant, all of that, right? Versus, so let's look at some of the things in the background of this guy's. So we can see like he's very like, I'm gonna say like professional. Yeah, professional, informational. He seems a lot more just like to the point, right? He's got everything's really square behind him and like plain background, expert. Yeah, totally. All right, and then let's hop into this last one. So this last one, so Cameron Chopard. All right, so also masculine, right? It's also like very blue. Obviously, Cameron is a man. We see that. I think I'm gonna leave expert because there is something that like, we can see he's got like really good equipment, right? He's got really good podcasting equipment, which makes me think he's probably an expert at whatever it is that he does. I'm going to say engaging, inviting, because it's a lot of questions. It's a lot of like he's trying to pull people in. It's not even really about, oh, I guess it's a picture of a drink, right? So it's like almost like inviting someone in to come sit and have a drink. Cool. Awesome. So that is just kind of like a quick take, right? So we really like we were able to identify a lot of differences between these different visual feeds. So this is where, so typically when I work with any kind of website client, any type of social media content client, vulnerability. I'm gonna add that. Yeah. Yeah, vulnerability for this last one, right? And that's a big difference between this one and this one. Yeah. So anytime that I onboard a new client, one of the first things that we do in our discovery workshop is we do this visual identity jumpstart activity. And Dolores is like smiling because she's done it with me actually. So, um, and it really is just wanting to take that idea of like you really know a lot more than you think that you think you do about your visual identity that you want to cultivate, right? And so typically I ask people to kind of think through like, who are you trying to connect with, right? What do they want? What do they need from you? Um, and like to have people start there and then run through this example of all of these different adjective pairings, right? Because all of these things are helpful, but really it's seeing one right next to the other that's kind of the most helpful and using that contrast to help us figure out, why is this animation page different from this one? Why is this expert man's page different than this one, right? And kind of really figuring out what those contrasting differences are. So I'm going to give you all access to a copy of this for the next 24 hours, and you'll be able to actually go through and you'll use this little stamp feature. And you can just pick a stamp. And then I want you to actually go through and either with your current brand that exists, or maybe just using if you haven't, if you have something that's on the horizon for you, right? So if you have a new project or a new business coming up, I want you to go through this example and go through this set of adjective pairings and find kind of where you fall on these spectrums. And my favorite thing to have you do is really like close your eyes and imagine that you just get to the final result without having to do any work. This is a really key, this creative visualization is a really key part of this process, right? Because I don't want you to necessarily stress yourself out by getting too far ahead of yourself with, well, but I don't have photos. Well, but I don't have graphics. Well, but I don't have these things. I want you to just be able to close your eyes and just think like in a perfect world, when I open up the Instagram app on my phone, or when I open up my website, or when I open up whatever it is, uh, this is what I see. I see some light colors. I see some, bright oranges. I see some more illustrations. I see some more things like this, and really just allow those details to trickle in kind of slowly. And then after you've given yourself a minute to do that, go through and say, okay, it was more light. Okay, the shapes were pretty crisp. It was really monotone. It was really minimal. It was more photos than graphics, or whatever it is, and go down this list. And then once you've done that, you can kind of add any other ideas that you have, right? Because not everything fits neatly into those boxes. And then the last thing that I recommend doing for any kind of visual identity jumpstart is to take some time, kind of once you've done that, and then really think through like everywhere you're going to need to use these things. List every place that your visual identity is affected, right? Your Instagram, your even like the signature line in your emails, right? Everywhere where that might exist. And then you can also drop anything that you're already committed to. Fonts, colors, if you have a photo shoot that you've done, right? So well, I already invested in these photos, so it kind of has to match that. All fine. And this is really just kind of your most basic start to a visual brand guide for you and for your business. It can get really wild. You can get really detailed. You can get really in depth with any sort of visual branding, but this is really where I recommend anybody who's working on their own branding start. It's a great place to start. All right. Well, that is all that I have for you today as far as the visual identity jumpstart go. Oh, Emily too. Yeah. Emily says this process worked so well for me and made it a lot easier. Emily was the first person I ever did this with. Emily, you don't know this, but I wrote that workshop for you because you were my first website client. Yeah. So I'm glad that you liked it. It's refined a lot since we did it. But yeah. Are there any questions about that visual identity jumpstart or anything that folks want to share about that?
What are the things that you see being obstacles for folks in doing that exercise
Mhm.
that could be not obstacles for them?
Sure, yeah. The biggest thing that I see with obstacles is people can really get very in their head about trying to design the visual before they've done this process and trying to think through, what is feasible versus what do you want? What's going to work for you? And so yeah, I always kind of so in the world of like UX design and in the world of design, um, something that's really fun is like this concept of like always just start with your unicorn solution, right? Start with the unicorn because you can always pare things back and get a narwhal, but it's very hard to go from a narwhal to a unicorn. So start with the unicorn, right? Just imagine that money and time and all of these things are no object. It's totally fine. Because you can always decide later, oh, this is hard to find on Canva, and then scale back. Yeah, unicorn to narwhal. Hmm.
It
And
also
narwhal is
sounds
still
like,
so cool.
yeah, exactly. It also sounds like folks are trying to create the solution
Yeah,
before it's like trying to cook the meal without knowing the recipe,
totally.
even knowing the ingredients.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, trying to get to like a perfectly blended soup and you don't know what any of the ingredients are. Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, thanks all for being here. And I look forward to our next Tiny Talk in November. We're gonna have Rory, who I just totally spaced on Rory's last name. Rory from OpsWeaver. And he will be kind of going over some of the ways that he's used automation to really work through some of his kind of you're doing it wrong challenges as a small business owner and really be able to yeah, shape his business to better fit him. So I'm super excited. And yeah, thank you all so much for being here.